Good morning, students. So, myself, Dr. Ajay Gupta, and today we will discussing about cell injury and cellular adaptations. So, we will be discussing this chapter cell injury under these headings: cell physiology, cellular adaptations, cell injury, reversible cell injury, irreversible cell injury, free radical injury, ischemic reperfusion injury, modes of cell death, necrosis and its type, and last is apoptosis. So, the normal cell is able to handle normal physiological demands, maintaining a steady state called homeostasis. When more severe physiological stress and some pathological stimuli may bring a number of physiological and morphological cellular adaptations. If the limits of adaptive response to a stimulus are exceeded or cell is exposed to an injurious agent, cell injury occurs. Cell injury reversible up to a certain point, but if stimulus persists or is severe enough from the beginning, cell reaches a point of no return and the cell suffers irreversible cell injury and ultimately cell death. Now we can understand this by this flowchart. Cell maintains its steady state by homeostasis. If there is injurious stimuli, cell injury occurs. Firstly, in the presence of stress, there will be adaptations. If the cell is unable to adapt, then cell injury occurs. And if these injurious stimuli are mild and transient, then the cell injury will be reversible and cell will get its normal state. If these injurious stimuli are severe and they persist for long time, means progressive, so then the cell injury will be irreversible cell injury and ultimately cell will die and cell death occurs. Now the cell death are of two types. Firstly, by cell necrosis and second is apoptosis. We will discuss these two headings afterwards. Now first is cellular adaptations. What is the cellular adaptations? Definition of adaptations. Cellular adaptations is a state that lie intermediate between normal unstressed cells and the injured overstressed cell. Okay. The major important adaptive changes in the cells are hyperplasia, hypertrophy, atrophy, metaplasia and dysplasia. Now these are the types of cellular adaptations and these are the responsible physiological stimuli. In the presence of increased demand or increased trophic stimulation by the growth hormones or other hormones, the cellular adaptation that takes place in the body or cell is hyperplasia or hypertrophy. If the physiological stimuli are decreased nutrients or decrease in the stimulation, the adaptation will be atrophy. If there will be chronic irritation by chemical or physiological agent, the cellular adaptation will be metaplasia. Now, first hyperplasia. What is hyperplasia? Hyperplasia is an increase in the size of tissue or organ due to increase in the number of its specialized cells. Now, hyperplasia takes place if cellular population is capable of synthesizing DNA. Okay, DNA is must for hyperplasia to take place. So thus permitting mitotic division. As you all know that because of this mitotic division there will be increase in the number of cells. So it is required that the cells are capable of synthesizing DNA, then only hyperplasia will take place. Now we can understand the changes in hyperplasia. This is the microphotograph of the which tissue? Kidney tissue. You can see glomeruli, and here are the some tubules, and these are the capillaries. So this is the normal size of renal arteriole, and this is onion skin hyperplasia of the arterial wall. Now types of hyperplasia. Hyperplasia can take place, first is physiological or pathological. Under physiological it can be hormonal or compensatory. In pathological conditions there will be excessive hormonal stimulation or growth factors. Examples are endometrial hyperplasia or benign prostatic hyperplasia. Now physiological hyperplasia. First one is increased function demand. In physiological hyperplasia of breast in pregnancy and lactation is the first example of increased function demand under physiological hyperplasia. Another example of hyperplasia in physiological hyperplasia is hyperplasia of bone marrow in hemolytic anemia, iron deficiency anemia, vitamin B12 deficiency anemia or folic acid deficiency anemia. Another one, hyperplasia of the lining epithelia in the process of regeneration and repair of an ulcer or skin wound. Now these are the microphotographs showing breast tissue. In this is normal breast tissue, histological view of normal breast tissue, and here it is hyperplasia of the breast. Increased hormonal stimulation. Hyperplasia of the second one is increased hormonal stimulation, in which hyperplasia of endocrine gland secretion. First one, pituitary gland. If there is excessive growth hormone before puberty, it will lead to gigantism. If there is excessive growth hormone after puberty, it will lead to acromegaly. Likewise, in thyroid gland, excessive secretion of thyroid hormones leads to thyrotoxicosis. Okay? Parathyroid hormone, excessive secretion of parathyroid hormone will lead to hypercalcemia, metastatic calcification, osteitis fibrosa cystica, and last is adrenal gland. Excessive secretion of adrenal gland hormone leads to Cushing syndrome. So these are the increased hormonal stimulation under physiological hyperplasia. Now pathological hyperplasia. Most form of pathologic hyperplasia caused by excessive hormonal stimulation or growth factors acting on target cells. Examples are in breast, mammary cystic hyperplasia or fibrocystic disease. Endometrial hyperplasia. In prostate, benign prostatic hyperplasia are the examples of pathological hyperplasia. This microphotograph showing histological picture of endometrial hyperplasia. These are the glands, endometrial glands, and this is benign prostatic hyperplasia. This is normal prostate, you can see, and there is nodular hyperplasia of the prostate. Another example, hyperplasia of connective tissue cells in wound healing due to proliferation of the fibroblast and blood vessels. Next is compensatory hyperplasia in liver after partial hepatectomy. Pseudoneoplastic hyperplasia. These are the pseudoneoplastic. They resemble like neoplasia, but they are not. That's why they are known as pseudoneoplastic hyperplasia. Pseudomalignant connective tissue hyperplasia. It can occur in connective tissue or in epithelial tissue. If it occurs in connective tissue, pseudolymphoma of orbit are the example, and pseudosarcoma in fibrous tissue. And pseudomalignant epithelial hyperplasia, example is keratoacanthoma, and hyperplasia of skin around chronic ulcer. Now, chronic proliferation depends on the action of, these are some factors that are responsible for the proliferation. What are they? Epidermal growth factors, alpha transforming growth factors, HER2/neu, interleukin 6, and tumor necrosis factors. Likewise, it is also controlled by growth inhibitors. Okay, this is controlled by the growth inhibitors. Which one is? Transforming growth factor beta and others. It differs from the neoplasia by the following things. It occurs in tissue made up of labile and stable cells that have the power of regeneration under the normal and pathological conditions, occurs in response to a stimulus and continues as the stimulus continues and disappears when it is removed. Usually performs a function. Example is lactating breast. Okay, in this there will be proliferation of the lactating tissue, breast tissue, but it is not neoplasia. It is a reversible, non-neoplastic process. Nevertheless, sometimes malignant tumors do arise on the top of abnormal or atypical hyperplasia. Example is endometrial hyperplasia. Now, second is hypertrophy. What is hypertrophy? It is an increase in the size of organ or tissue due to increase in the size of its specialized cells. Okay. So, what was there in hyperplasia? In hyperplasia, there was increase in the number of cells. Okay. But here, increase in the increase in the size of its cells. It involves cell enlargement without cell division. So here there is no cell division. In this photograph you can see the uterus. This is the normal size uterus and it is gravid uterus or hyperplastic uterus. This is microphotograph. This showing normal smooth muscle of the uterus, and here it is hypertrophied muscle. You can see the plump cells. In a pure form, it is found in muscles, occurs in response to increased demand for overwork, like skeletal muscles in athletes, smooth muscles in uterus in pregnancy, stomach in pyloric stenosis, alimentary tract proximal to the obstruction, urinary bladder with obstruction to the urine outflow. So this photograph is showing pyloric stenosis and there is hypertrophy of the stomach wall that is proximal to the stricture. Here in this photograph intestine, there is obstruction at the bowel and there is hypertrophy of the muscle of the intestine proximal to the stenosis. This is hypertrophied heart. Here you can see this is normal heart and it is hypertrophied heart, and this is hypertrophied and dilated heart. Physiologic or hormonal hypertrophy occurs during maturation under the effect of hormones. Sex hormones at puberty leads to hypertrophy of juvenile sex organs and breast tissue in lactating women under the effect of prolactin. And third is compensatory hypertrophy of one kidney due to removal of the other. Now, third adaptation is atrophy. What is atrophy? Atrophy is a reduction in the size of an organ after it has reached normal adult development. Okay. First, it has reached to its normal adult development, then there is reduction in the size of organ due to decrease in the number and or the size of its specialized cells. Okay. Now atrophy represents a reduction in the structural component of the cell. Atrophy may progress to point at which cells are injured and die and replaced by the fatty ingrowth. Now what is the mechanism for atrophy? So these are the mechanisms. First is loss of innervation. Second, reduced nutrient and oxygen supply, reduced functional demand, reduced hormonal stimulation. Okay, these are the mechanisms those are responsible for the atrophy. These can occur under physiological or pathological conditions. What are the physiological conditions? Ductus arteriosus and umbilical vessels after birth, thymus gland after puberty, lymphoid tissue in adenoids and tonsils, postmenopausal atrophy of breast, uterus and ovaries, aging process in skin, brown atrophy of heart and brain atrophy. Postpartum involution of the uterus are the examples of physiological atrophy. Now, pathological atrophy. These are some examples. Pathological atrophy can be ischemic type, ischemic atrophy, disuse atrophy, neuropathic atrophy and pressure atrophy. In ischemic atrophy, usually due to partial or gradual occlusion of the arterial blood supply, like in atherosclerosis, in heart, okay, ischemic heart disease. Brain or kidney are the other examples of ischemic atrophy. Second is disuse atrophy due to forced inactivity of muscle. Example, after prolonged immobilization of a limb in plaster or cast. Third is neuropathic atrophy following lower motor neuron disease in poliomyelitis. And the other example is pressure atrophy. Pressure upon a localized area or group of cells interfering with its blood and nutrient supply. Pressure by growing tumor. Prolonged pressure of a pulsating aortic aneurysm may cause pressure atrophy of the undersurface of the sternum anteriorly and of the bodies of the vertebra posteriorly. Now you can see this is the normal heart cardiac muscles. Okay, these are the normal cardiac muscles, and here it is atrophic. You can see the size of the cardiac muscle, and here it is reduced in the size. These photographs showing brain. This is normal brain tissue, and it is atrophied brain, showing narrowing of the gyri and widening of the sulci. Okay. Pressure atrophy on renal tissue by distended pelvis. Here it is normal structure of the kidney, but here you can see a stone or obstruction in the ureter, upper ureter. It causes back pressure on the cortex of the kidney, and it will lead to thinning of the cortex. So it is an example of pressure atrophy. Hormonal atrophy. Cessation of the pituitary activity results in atrophic changes in thyroid, adrenals, ovaries and other organs that are influenced by pituitary hormones. Other one is secondary in immunologic injuries. The resulting tissue damage is accompanied by fibrosis and atrophy of the affected organ. Example is primary Addison's disease. Now other adaptation is metaplasia. What is metaplasia? It is the transformation of one type of differentiated tissue into another type of the same kind. It may occur in either epithelial or connective tissue. Okay, it is transformation of one type of differentiated tissue into another type of same kind. So what is the pathogenesis? Metaplasia occurs Metaplasia is thought to arise from the reprogramming of stem cells to differentiate along new pathway under the effect of mixture of cytokines and growth factors. The most common is the replacement of glandular epithelium by the squamous one due to prolonged chronic irritation, replacing the thin delicate epithelium with the tougher and more resistant squamous epithelium. Okay, so the glandular epithelium or columnar epithelium is delicate epithelium and the squamous one is tougher and more resistant. This change is occurred due to chronic irritation. So it is metaplasia. It carries the risk of malignant transformation. In this photograph you can understand that this is the columnar epithelium. Okay, delicate one. It is replaced due to metaplasia or due to chronic irritation in the squamous epithelium that is tougher. So it is squamous metaplasia. Here is the example. Here this is the columnar epithelium normal and it is converted to and changed in transformed into squamous epithelium. Epithelial metaplasia. First one is squamous metaplasia. In squamous metaplasia, it can occur from the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium to the squamous. Examples are trachea and bronchi in chronic bronchitis, cigarette smoking and bronchiectasis, nasal sinuses in chronic sinusitis and hypovitaminosis A. These are the examples of squamous metaplasia. And second one is from transitional epithelium in urinary bladder. Third is from simple columnar epithelium in endocervical mucosa and glands in cervical erosion. Gallbladder with stones. These are the simple columnar to squamous. And from the mesothelium of the pleura and peritoneum to the squamous. This is pseudo-stratified epithelium changed to squamous. So it is squamous metaplasia in bronchitis. Another example, same columnar epithelium is changed to the squamous. Columnar metaplasia. Second is columnar metaplasia from the squamous. Example is Barrett's esophagus. It is precancerous. Where it occurs? In the lower esophagus. Second one is intestinal metaplasia of specialized gastric mucosa in the chronic atrophic gastritis. Okay. Third example of columnar metaplasia is apocrine, from apocrine. Pink cells hyperplasia seen in fibrocystic disease of the breast, in mesothelium of pleura, peritoneum and synovium. So second one is connective tissue metaplasia. It is the formation of cartilage, bone or adipose tissue in tissues that normally do not contain these elements. Okay, that is abnormal presence of these tissues. Which tissues? Cartilage, bone and adipose tissue where they normally do not present. So example is osseous metaplasia. Sites of dystrophic calcification is in scars, old TB, in muscles, in post-traumatic myositic ossificans. This photograph is showing connective tissue metaplasia. Now, second adaptation, the last adaptation is dysplasia or intraepithelial neoplasia, also known as intraepithelial neoplasia. Definition: it is a partial loss of differentiation. The involved epithelium shows evidence of cellular atypia, pleomorphism of the cell, that is variation in the size and shape, hyperchromatic nuclei with increased nucleocytoplasmic ratio and increased mitotic activity. There will be loss of polarity, that is orientation of the cells, disordered maturation with impaired function, and no invasion of the basement membrane. It is very important. In dysplasia, there will be no invasion of the basement membrane. That's why it is not a cancer. We can differentiate by this point with the cancer. Second, it represents reaction of the underlying inflammation or to chronic irritation. Mild to moderate degree of dysplasia are reversible when the evoking stimulus is removed. However, severe degree of dysplasia is considered pre-malignant. Now, you can better understand by this photograph. This is mucus secreting epithelium, okay, columnar epithelium. Now, okay, the cells become progressively flattened towards the surface. Now, it is converted to the dysplastic epithelium, okay, due to continuous irritation. Metaplasia occurs due to irritation or continuous stimulus, and if the stimuli is persist, so what is the next adaptation is dysplastic changes. The cell retain plum shape near surface here, that is loss of normal arrangement, and are larger. Nuclei are irregular, there will be mitotic activities. So these are the features of the dysplasia. Now, examples of dysplasia occurs in the cervix in chronic cervicitis, in urothelium of urinary bladder in case of schistosomiasis. The most severe form when the changes occupy the whole thickness of the epithelium indicates the diagnosis of intraepithelial carcinoma or carcinoma in situ. It is pre-invasive carcinoma. Carcinoma in situ is characterized by diffuse cellular atypia involving the whole thickness of the affected epithelium without invasion of the basement membrane. The commonest site of intraepithelial neoplasia are cervix, uteri, bronchial epithelium, and buccal mucosa and skin. So this photograph is showing carcinoma in situ. Here you can see the basement membrane is intact, and there are changes of dysplasia. Mitotic activity is there, hyperchromasia is there, okay. There is loss of orientation. Now, so we have seen that a normal cell, if there is mild or moderate stress, then reversible cell injury will occur, and there will be degeneration, subcellular alterations or intracellular accumulations, and if stress is removed, repair and healing occurs and cell get back to the normal state. If this stress is severe and persistent, there will be irreversible cell injury and ultimately cell death. If there is altered function demand of the cell, there will be adaptations, and the types we have discussed already: hyperplasia, hypertrophy, atrophy, metaplasia, and dysplasia. If stress is removed, normal cell is restored. Now, what is the etiology of the cell injury? So we can divide it into two categories, by the genetic causes and acquired causes. And based on the underlying agent, the acquired causes of the cell injury can be further categorized like hypoxia, ischemia, physical agent, chemical agent and drugs, microbial agent, immunological agent, nutritional derangements, aging, psychogenetic diseases, iatrogenic factors and idiopathic diseases. So these are the etiological agent of the cell injury. What is the pathogenesis of cell injury? It depends upon these four factors. First one is type, duration, severity of the injurious agent. Second, type, status and adaptability of the target cell. Third is underlying intracellular phenomena. And fourth is morphologic consequences. Now this flow chart showing the physiology of the cell injury. In ischemia, if there is ischemia or hypoxia, will lead to what? Decrease in the ATP generation. If there is less ATP generation, there will be increase in the cytosolic calcium due to influx of calcium. Okay, if there is increased cytosolic calcium, it will lead to increase in the mitochondrial calcium. Increased level of calcium in the mitochondria due to increased cytosolic calcium will lead to what? Activation of different enzymes. There will be activation of many enzymes. What will this lead to? This will lead to increased loss of membrane phospholipid due to activation of phospholipase and lipid breakdown products or cytoskeletal injury, and all these activity will lead to membrane damage. And what other effect will be there due to decreased ATP generation? There will be decrease in the synthesis of membrane phospholipid, and there will be toxic oxygen radicals production. What are these toxic oxygen radicals? Superoxide ion, peroxide ion or hydroxyl ion. And these reactive oxygen species or radicals will lead to lipid peroxidation and DNA damage. Ultimately, all these factors will lead to membrane damage, and membrane damage is irreversible. So it will lead to cell death. And these are the signs of cell death. What are the signs? Myelin figures in the cell and elevation of some enzymes in serum, SGOT, LDH, CPKMB and troponin. And what are the nuclear changes that occur in cell death? Pycnosis, karyolysis and karyorrhexis. So this photograph is showing what are the morphological changes that occurs in the reversible and irreversible cell injury. So this is the normal cell. You can see. If there is reversible injury, there will be presence of myelin figure in the cytoplasm, and there will be swelling of the endoplasmic reticulum and mitochondria and membrane blebs. What are membrane blebs? These are the outpouching of the cell membrane. So these figures will be present in the reversible cell injury. If these injurious stimuli, okay, this injurious stimuli is progressive, what will occur? Cell death. And cell death occurs by the necrosis or apoptosis. If there is inflammation, in presence of inflammation, there will be necrosis. So in necrosis or cell death, there will be myelin figures, breakdown in the cell membrane, amorphous densities in the mitochondria. These are the features of irreversible cell injury. At this point, cell cannot get back to the normal condition. Now, what is the mechanism of cell death? Mechanism of cell death caused by different agents may vary. However, certain biochemical events are seen in the process of cell injury are, as we have seen, ATP depletion, loss of calcium homeostasis and free cytosolic calcium. There will be free radicals, presence of superoxide ion, hydroxyl radicals and hydrogen peroxide ion, defective membrane permeability, mitochondrial damage and cytoskeletal damage. What are the important targets of the cell injury? The first one is aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is the target of cell injury. In aerobic respiration, there will be depletion of the ATP production or decreased synthesis in the ATP production. Other target is cell membrane damage, cell membrane of the plasma membrane, membrane of the mitochondria, lysosomes and other organelles. And next one is protein synthesis, cytoskeleton and genetic apparatus. These are the targets of the cell injury. Due to injurious stimuli, there will be decrease in the ATP production or depletion in the ATP, will lead to loss of energy dependent cellular functions. Okay. Other one is membrane damage, as we have seen already, and increase in the intracellular calcium and reactive oxygen species. They all will conclude into the protein breakdown and DNA damage. ATP depletion and hypoxia. What occurs in mitochondria? There will be reduced oxidative phosphorylation. In cell membrane, there will be reduced sodium pump, and sodium and water enters the cell and potassium exists due to reduced sodium pump activation. Endoplasmic reticulum dilates, cell swellings and bleb appears. Anaerobic glycolysis occurs when there will be reduced oxidative phosphorylation. There will be presence of anaerobic glycolysis. As a result of what occurs? Accumulation of the lactic acid and acidic pH, which interferes with the enzymes, and there will be failure of calcium pump, leads to influx of calcium into the cells, activates various enzymes to the determinant of the cell. There will be loss of ribosome from the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and there will be fall in synthesis of protein and structural proteins, okay, and enzymes. Misfolded protein leads to unfolded protein response, which may further injure the cell. Now this photograph explain the same thing. There will be ischemia in mitochondria. There will be decreased oxidative phosphorylation and decreased ATP production and decreased activity of the sodium pump. So increase in the calcium, water and sodium into the cells and efflux of the potassium. So cell swelling or endoplasmic reticulum or other organelles will be swell. Increase in the anaerobic glycolysis lead to decrease in the pH and clumping of the nuclear chromatin and decrease glycogen. Other effects: detachment of the ribosome will lead to decreased protein synthesis and lipid deposition. Now, what is the importance of calcium? This photograph explains the importance of the calcium. Due to injurious agent, there will be increase in the calcium into the cytosol. Okay, so there are, as I have already said, that increased cytosolic calcium leads to activation of different enzymes. So if there is activation of ATPase, there will be decrease in the ATP. Activation of phospholipase, there will be decrease in the phospholipids. Activation of proteases will lead to disruption of the cell membrane and cytoskeletal protein. Endonuclease causes activation, endonuclease activation leads to nucleus chromatin damage. So these protein causes membrane damage. So it is the effect of increased cytosolic calcium that there will be membrane damage. Now, importance of the free radicals. Importance of the free radicals. Free radicals have single unpaired electron in the outer orbit. They are highly reactive with adjacent molecules, are usually derived from the oxygen to produce reactive oxygen species, superoxide, hydroxyl radicals or peroxide are normally produced during the cellular respiration. Protective molecules include superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, vitamin E, vitamin C, catalase. Production in excess, they react with and damage protein, lipids, carbohydrate, nucleic acids. These damaged molecules may themselves be reactive species with a certain reaction being set up with widespread damage. Now, importance of the free radicals. What are free radicals? Free radicals have a single unpaired electron in the outer orbit. They are highly reactive with adjacent molecules. They are usually derived from oxygen to produce reactive oxygen species. Examples: superoxide, hydroxyl radicals or peroxide ions. They are normally produced during the cellular respiration. Protective molecules. What are the protective molecules from the that helps or protects from the effect of reactive species are superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, vitamin E, vitamin C and catalase. These are the protective molecules. Reactive species or free radicals produced in excess, they react with and damage protein, lipids, carbohydrates and nucleic acids. Okay. These damaged molecules may themselves be reactive species with a chain reaction being set up with widespread damage. In addition to oxygen derived free radicals, nitric oxide can act as a free radical and be converted to an even more reactive anion. Iron and copper catalyze free radical formation and are thus important in generation of reactive species. Binding to molecules such as transferrin, ferritin and ceruloplasmin is protective. Free radical causes lipid peroxidation in cell membrane, oxidation of amino acid, proteins by the proteasomes with further cell damage. Now this can be understood by this photograph. Here you can see in the presence of inflammation, radiation, oxygen toxicity, chemicals, reperfusion injury, in the presence of oxygen there will be production of reactive oxygen species. Okay, due to these stimuli in the presence of oxygen, these reactive oxygen species are formed and they lead to cell injury. What are the effects that occur due to reactive species? Membrane lipid peroxidation, DNA fragmentation, protein cross-linking and fragmentation, and if there is protection from the effect of these reactive oxygen species by the enzymes, those we have discussed earlier. In the membrane there will be vitamin E and C and beta carotene that protect from the effect of reactive species. In cytosol there will be superoxide dismutase, vitamin C, glutathione peroxidase, ferritin and ceruloplasmin, that these are the protective molecules in the cytoplasm. In mitochondria there will be superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase. In peroxisomes there will be catalase. So these molecules or these enzymes or these protective factors protect from the effect of reactive species. Those are formed in these conditions. Now these are the free radicals and diseases that occurs. What are the examples? Free radicals may be common pathway for the most types of cell damage, particularly oxygen derived free radicals. So next is free radical and diseases associated with the free radical injury. Free radical may be common pathway for most types of cell damage, particularly oxygen derived free radicals, that is oxidative stress. Some examples are oxygen toxicity, ischemia, reperfusion injury, radiation injury, metabolism of drugs, toxins and pollutants, leukocyte killing of bacteria or. So next is free radical and diseases associated with the free radical injury. Free radical may be common pathway for most types of cell damage, particularly oxygen derived free radicals, that is oxidative stress. Some examples are oxygen toxicity, ischemia, reperfusion injury, radiation injury, metabolism of drugs, toxins and pollutants, leukocyte killing of bacteria or in non-bacterial inflammations. Release of iron in hemorrhages enhance the oxidative stress. Lipid peroxidation of low density lipoprotein in atherosclerosis. Cancer production. Aging. Therapies for combating oxidative stress are available for prevention or treatment of the antioxidants and or are free radical scavengers, that is vitamin A, vitamin C and vitamin E. Now, mechanism of the cell injury by the ionizing radiation. By the effect of ionizing radiation, the water molecule is breakdowns into the hydroxyl ion, that is free radical, and these hydroxyl ion act upon the proliferating and non-proliferating cells. In proliferating cells, that is epithelial cells, these ions damages the DNA and lead to genetic damage and mutations. Likewise, these DNA damage causes inhibition of DNA replication and apoptosis. In non-proliferating cells like neuron, it lead to lipid peroxidation, cell membrane damage and induces necrosis. Now, what is ischemia reperfusion injury? If cells are reversibly injured due to ischemia, complete recovery occurs following the restoration of blood flow, as we know. However, reperfusion can result in more damage, that including cell death. This is due to incompletely metabolized products producing reactive oxygen species on reintroduction of the oxygen. That means the incompletely metabolized products are responsible for this ischemia reperfusion injury, especially damaging to the mitochondria, loss of antioxidants during ischemia, inflow of the calcium with renewed blood flow, recruitment of leukocytes to the injured area. Reperfusion injury is especially important in ischemic damage to the heart and brain and in organ transplantation. Various therapies and preventive measures are in use. Now, next is membrane damage. As we have already discussed about the membrane damage in mitochondria, mitochondrial permeability is transition. There will be leakage of the cytochrome C due to membrane damage of the mitochondria, and it will lead to activation of the apoptosis. In plasma, membrane damage occurs with the ischemia or hypoxia and free radicals. Immune mechanism as with the complement activations. All membrane may be damaged and ruptured by the mechanical force in trauma or extreme cold. Damage to the lysosomal membrane can lead to cell death by necrosis.
As we already discussed about the membrane damage effect of increased cytosolic calcium and ischemia. Due to increased cytosolic calcium, there will be activation of the different enzyme and it will lead to membrane damage. Similarly, decreased ATP production will lead to cell membrane damage. Other agent causing cell injury, chemical and biological agent. In chemical agents, it causes direct effect and indirect effect. By direct effect, cyanide on cytochrome oxidase, mercury chloride on sulfhydryl groups of protein, resins on ribosomes, cytotoxic effect of the chemotherapy and antibiotics. By indirect effect, via free radicals. Next, biological agent. They also affect directly and indirectly. By direct effect of the bacterial toxin, cytopathic effect of virus and other actions such as interfering with the DNA, RNA, protein and cell membrane, inducing apoptosis. By indirect effect via host immune reaction. So this concludes the part 1 of the cell injury, and in next class we will discussing about the morphology of the cell injury and other topics.